All right, welcome in. College football talk always here for you guys. A special day, I think, because story time, I told you, will be fantastic. We talked about it, Jesse Palmer. Like, there's so much history with me and Jesse. It was cool because Jesse kind of really showed me what TV was about because he obviously had more experience when I started, but been a great friend for a long time. So, Brent, you will thoroughly enjoy Brent Rollins, PFF member, Rivals, contributors. You will enjoy him, Brent. I think you'll enjoy probably being able to ask some of the questions, and because you've dealt with probably me, as one of the longer people in my life, and know it comes with a lot. So you can appreciate that. So I think you'll love my man. But we just finished EA Sports recordings. We were doing recordings for the video game. He's like, "Give me 5," and I was like, "All right, got you, homie. We'll give you 5."
What's funny, like to me, and Jesse, you mentioned the storytelling, and I think too. There was a clip of him on the Rich Eisen show recently, or not recently, but in the past. And he was talking about when he had to tell Tom Coughlin about being on The Bachelor, and just the way he told that story, and the fact that at the end they come back for camp, I think it was, and Coughlin goes, "Why'd you pick Jessica?" or something like he
Who Tom Coughlin is like Mr. Serious, Mr. No Fun, no smile when you get across that line. So that's pretty good.
All right. So first thing though, we got to get to something that people engaged with in a very interesting way yesterday when tweeted out, if you can only pick one thing for your college football team to massively improve in 2025, who's your team and what are you fixing? What do you think was probably the number one thing, specifically from people who follow you and your kind of lean, I guess?
My lean?
As Georgia, like you are a Georgia player,
gotcha.
like the Georgia fan base. If you said, if the Georgia fan base and you're looking in there, what do you think it was?
I would say offensive line.
I think that was probably that and drops.
That and catching the dang ball.
Yeah, receiver drops.
Those
were there. Cole Kubelik of the ESPN, he did a nice one with that, and his was simple enough and just said the win column. I mean,
well, that's what's great though is so many people take things different ways when you ask questions. But I love fan bases because they love their teams, and they follow their teams 24/7. Like they live and die with every play, and they know what's going on. Like that's what I thought was one of the cooler things about television when you get into it. Like you can't bull crap Nebraska fans. Like that's all they do. They follow their team 24/7. Georgia fans, the list goes on, and you start to see their cultures and their things. So I think there's a lot of fan bases that they've already been thinking about this. Like what the freak needs to change next year for us to take the next step. And I think that those are questions that all the coaching staffs are asking, right?
Yep.
Like every coaching staff is like, where do we need to improve? What needs to get better so we don't have this result again next year and we can be more what Ohio State is? I
mean, and the thing you talked about with the fan bases specifically, like the guy who follows Nebraska or Florida, because the Florida alum that we're about to bring in here, so they know that they just recruited this kid from Ocala and he's the third string DT. And if this guy gets, injured, and you've on the outside, a lot of times you have no clue. And then this guy's dealing with an ankle, the people that follow their fan base, they know that to the nth degree. So you can't bull fans.
Bull crap a bull crapper. No. And that's why you have a responsibility. And that's why you don't like some people. That's why some people don't like people in the media, because they don't know. And when you don't know, it's like, dude, this is your job. And I took that serious. And I'm telling you, Jesse showed me that as much as anybody. I've never met someone who prepares more than him. He is always in it. He's in the details. He's watching the tape and really studying it. And that's how Kirk knows what he's talking about, right? These guys, they study it. They watch it 24/7. And I've always said, man, when you go to different campuses in the country and you talk to these folks and you don't know what you're talking about, these coaches know it. They know when you're full of crap. And fortunately actually for the guy with, it's amazing, Jesse. I've known you for so long now, and we've worked together back to Palmer and Pollack, which nobody remembers or wants to remember. But how does your hair just stay so fantastic? I mean, look at that. That hair just it never gets old. Look at that. I mean, it's just beautiful.
It does what it wants. You know this. I mean, it just, from I wake up going back to Palmer and Pollack, by the way, thinking about that gave me PTSD. Thinking about I used to fly from New York to Charlotte on Monday mornings, and I would be on a 5 a.m. flight. Hair looked just like this at 5 a.m. right out of bed. Get off the plane in Charlotte, go right to the studio, meet Pollack. We would have a production meeting for an hour, and then we go right on set. How long was that show, Pollack?
It was 3 hours, I think.
3 hours live, where we would just spit football, and then I would go right back to the airport in Charlotte. You would drive home with your foot out the window, and I would fly back to New York, and then all of a sudden, I'd be back in New York, and it's 7:30, and I'm right back where I started, and I was just trying to process what just happened. It was the craziest day ever, but the best part was the 3 hours with Pollack, just literally touching on everything throughout the country. That was, I know, a show no one's going to remember, but that was maybe one of the funnest things I've done at ESPN.
It still lives on YouTube. I found some YouTube clips yesterday. You guys interviewing Brandon Whedon, the Honey Badger.
Yeah.
Is Brandon Whedon 50 now?
Well, how old are you? 30, so it was really close.
He was 37 back in the day, dude. That just goes to show you just how long ago Pollack and I were working there. That's crazy.
All right, so you said you just finished up EA Sports. You guys take us behind the curtain. What's that like for you, Jesse, and then kind of working together? Because I think it's both of you kind of back and forth, right?
Well, first off, I don't have as nice a setup as Pollack does. This is the first time I've actually seen his setup. Is that the microphone you use for EA Sports?
No, it's not. I actually go over there and around the corner. It's not this nice for EA.
Dude, I'm mine is not glamorous and luxurious at all. I'm literally in a closet with a bunch of clothes and a little microphone. I never have my video on, so no one can see what it looks like. It is. I think people at home who play the game think that David and I fly into this really luxe studio and we sit down and we just rap football. That is not at all what it's like. The experience, though, because how many years have we been doing it now? 2.5, would you say?
At least, yeah,
dude. I mean, it's been a minute, but getting to work with David is great because we already have great chemistry based on all the different shows. And you got to remember, David and I used to be in the booth together ourselves anyway, doing Thursday Night Football. So, and we do it with Reese, who's actually the guy that's doing our play-by-play in the game. So from that standpoint, at least for me, speaking on my own behalf, that's I think probably what I enjoy about it the most.
I've always wondered, do you guys, are there outtakes? Is it a lot of takes, or is it, I forget, I thought it was just reading, right? There, where it's not cut, we got to read that again. It's reading
for some people. But me and Jesse don't really roll like that. So literally, I think you do the same thing, right, Jesse? We have a guy on there, Torsten, who's an absolute humpy, a get off my lawn guy, just cantankerous, which is funny because we talked about that today, actually. But he'll tell you context of something that's going on in the game. And then it's just all right, Palmer, you're going first. Palmer, somebody just did this, blank. And then we just go, and then I take it off of Jesse, or he'll take it off of me. There is a script, and he does send it, but I don't think you've ever read it. Have you, Jesse?
No, I don't. But because to me, it's just easier, I think, just to hear the situation and react to it right away, and then react to what you're saying right in the moment, the way we would in the game anyway. But I don't know about you, man. The hardest part for me in doing that game is that you're never reacting to something you see. When I'm in the booth calling a game in real life, obviously you watch the play happen, and then you have a 30-second window to talk about what you just saw. There's literally somebody, Torsten in this case, is just telling us what happened on the play, but it's not overly specific. So you just have to kind of imagine it in your head and try to regurgitate that and do it with Dave. And I think David and I sort of have the same strategy, but I think with us, it's better when we sort of riff and just sort of free ball.
So you mentioned the booth part. I have to ask, and then I'll let Davey drive. The most uncomfortable he made you. When was the most uncomfortable he made you in the booth? Because I know of certain either freight, maybe it's something he said, but probably something that he let out of his bodily gas or something of that nature that he, 'cause I'm sure he made you massively uncomfortable at some point in the booth.
Bro, Pollack can gas the booth up now. and you'd get those early September SEC matchups, 100 degrees and humid, not a lot of wind, not a lot of airflow. And the thing about David is there is no alert. You're not getting a 5-second head start like, guys, I apologize in advance. I had a lot of broccoli at lunch. I mean, it was like a surprise. And David would actually be like, it would hit you. You would literally eat it. And then you'd look over at him and he was already smiling, looking at you like,
don't open your mouth because that'll get right on your teeth.
and like, dude, one of the funniest things about him too, bro, he would actually get mad if there was no reaction. Like he'd look at me and hit me and go, "You didn't smell that? You didn't get any of that?
You didn't get that?"
And I'm like, I don't like what? And he's like, "Really? Damn, I thought that was going to get you. I'm going to get closer next time." And he would literally be planning it. Like the conversations with him in commercial breaks in games, some of the funniest stuff that happened. But yeah, it was never anything David said. David said a lot of stuff. It was never the stuff he said that made you uncomfortable. More so, it was the things that he did or expelled.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Hey, Jesse, like I told y'all, I've been telling y'all, one of the best storytellers ever. Palmer, take us to a Thursday night game with Oregon and Arizona State. I think you know exactly where I'm going. We met with a specific coach, and I want you to let everybody in on that meeting room and what took place behind the curtain.
Okay. So what David's referring to is Arizona State when Todd Graham was their head coach, and they'd had a pretty good defense leading into that game. Who's that D tackle they had, Pollack?
Sutton,
who was just destroying everybody.
Yes.
And so here comes, high flying, high octane Marcus Mariota, Oregon, rolling into town. And so we're having our coaches meeting with Coach Graham the day before the game. We're in his office. It's Reese, Pollack, and myself and our producer and director. And at the end of the meeting, when it's kind of less formal and we're kind of gathering our stuff and we're leaving, Coach Graham, he kind of goes around real quick. He's like, "Hey, just real quick, Reese, let me ask you a question. You think we're going to win this game?" And Reese gives this really eloquent, diplomatic answer as to, "Hey, listen, if this happens and on defense, if Sutton goes off and they can't block, I think he can penetrate and make some plays. Absolutely. You guys get a couple turnovers early. I could see you winning. Jesse, what do you think?" And I kind of do my Canadian sit on the fence, just very, not kind of, like it's possible. It's college football. You guys got a lot of big time players. You're winning games. I think so. And he's like, "Okay, great." And he kind of stops it there. I look over at David and I don't know if you can see this. Like David's he's like leaning in his chair like this. And like, I'm standing up, I got my stuff, I'm getting ready to walk out. And David's kind of like, "Coach, you didn't ask me what I think." And he's like, "Okay, yeah. What do you think?" And David's like, "Yeah, you got no shot." Where on the field do you have an advantage against this team? How do you expect? Is their bus not going to show up? Where do you win the game against these guys? They tell me one matchup. And like Reese and I, because we know David, right? We're not surprised that he said that, but Coach Graham had no idea that was coming. And that was kind of like, he was like stonewalled right in that moment. And we were kind of walking out of there, and it was unbelievable. And it's funny because I think during doing EA a couple sessions ago, Dave, we're actually talking about that with Torsten, right?
Yeah.
And you remember that game was crazy. Like I think some people like our Torsten, by the way, is an Oregon Duck, so he remembers like every Oregon game,
every play. And
we remember in that game, like the very first play and snap of the game, Sutton had like a tackle for loss fumble.
Yep, caused the fumble.
And then Arizona State recovered, and then I think they scored a touchdown.
They did. Yeah, they went up 7-0.
And all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, this is happening. And then I think Oregon ripped off like 30 points, like in the next like 20 minutes. And Pollack's just like, Pollack's up in the booth and he's like, I told him.
I think the biggest part was like, because you know how this works. Like we're in the meetings with these coaches, and they're telling you things. And listen, I'll be honest. I don't know how you feel about this, Jesse. I'd be interested to see how you think. Like a lot of times, I'm like, okay, and he sold us for a solid 30 minutes. Like he sold us. Like we're built for this. This is who we practice to beat. This is who we prepare to beat. And I'm like, okay, I got it. And I get it. They're the standard and you're going after them. And then it just kept going. Like at every position, we do tempo better than them. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, no, you don't. Okay. Like, I think it just got to a point where, and then they asked you to, and then he didn't ask me. And I was just, what are we doing? Like, no.
Yeah. I remember he said, we play defense. And you were like, no, you don't. You blitz.
Yeah, a lot.
You blitz a lot.
Unsoundly.
And you get gashed. And so, yeah, I mean, like, David and I have been in enough of those meetings, I think, where obviously, there are a lot of coaches that are hoping they can use you as a soundboard or an opportunity to market or advertise or highlight a part of their program, right? It's a 3.5-hour infomercial essentially on game day for their team. And I think certain coaches, I'm not saying all coaches do this, and certainly they all don't. I think there are some that try to do that, but I think generally when there's people like, especially I think former players, guys like David, who watch a lot of film and have an opinion about it, it's kind of hard to do that with. And so, yeah, that was, I mean, you could imagine, like, dude, did
you kind of like
talking about
it?
Yeah, no, it's just like, it was crazy. Like the best parts were like the coaches meetings and like talking ball and really getting into the X's and O's with those guys. But then like, I don't know if David ever told you about our spin sessions we used to have.
I was going to ask.
Wednesdays.
You got to.
Oh, it was legit. So one thing we always made sure we found time to do, no matter where we went and played or where we were going to call a game, is we would get there on Wednesday morning. We'd go knock out the coach interview as fast as we possibly could. David and I would go to the equipment room. We'd get free gear, and then we would go out onto their field and we would throw the route tree. So I'd play quarterback. David was a receiver. Reese would go out there and get reps. Our producer, Josh Hoffman, would go out there and get reps. Jeff Evers, our director, would go out there and get reps. Sometimes the sideline reporter would be out there running reps, and David would lead it. And we'd literally go through the route tree up and down the field, every stadium that we called a game at. And it was the greatest thing of all time. It was the greatest single thing of all time. And we always looked forward to it. There were some places we went where we ended up like recording it, and then we would use it in like a Sports Center segment. Like OBJ had that crazy catch with the New York Giants. And so, we tried to recreate that. Yeah, you see, you got some of it right here. These pictures. That's it.
Yeah, baby.
And I'm wearing glasses like a total hump. But that's the idea. And so we tried to like recreate the OBJ catch for Sports Center at Texas A&M, which was amazing.
Yeah, we did it.
And it was incredible. It was our first take, by the way. If you remember,
the first take. Yes.
Yeah, it's like literally like a 55-yard throw, and he like went over the top of his head and caught it behind his head in the end zone, and we literally could like leave the stadium. We got into we were in East Carolina once, and there was like a bunch of dudes playing like pickup football, and Pollack like challenged them and wanted to play them in a game of pickup football. Like it got hyper competitive, and then we would go to dinner as a crew and play credit card roulette.
All right, you got to tell them what. First of all, before we get to credit card roulette, like I want you to give me the scouting report on Reese Davis and maybe specifically his calf and when he ran routes, because Reese was out there with us, and Reese obviously is a little bit older than us, but still in phenomenal shape. Awesome guy, but he ran the route tree and he would do it with intent. Like he was not joking around. But
no.
But what happened a good bit?
I mean, listen, Reese is more of a possession guy. He's probably going to be working like hitches and slants and quick outs underneath stuff. He doesn't have the top end speed or the ability really to stretch a defense or the calf muscles to withstand it. The longer the routes would generally get, Reese would pull a calf muscle every spin session, usually by the time he got to like the dig, like the deep in route. But to David's point, man, he was always out there. He wanted to partake. He wanted to do it. He did have pretty good hands, actually. I mean,
Solid.
if you could get it somewhere within his frame, the catch radius on Reese was pretty good. I'll tell you who was really good. And so on Thanksgiving every year, we would always have a big Turkey Day game. And Reese would invite his kids, and Pollack even invited his family as well. And so like the whole family could play. Reese's son, who went and played baseball, I think he played at Princeton, right?
Duke too, I think.
Duke, yeah.
He transferred a couple times, yeah.
Bro, he was good. Like
He's fast.
Like I don't know if he got his dad's athleticism in the gene pool, if that's from his mom, but it was like it was good. It was always fun having Reese out there too. The problem is like David would get the first rep, and then it like that showed you what it should look like. Yeah, and then everybody would try to do that, and it didn't always quite look like that.
Yeah. Do you think Pollack was miscast as a defensive end? That he should have been a H-back in actuality?
David, how often do I tell you that?
Yeah. How often do you tell me that? Yeah, but tell him the George O'Leary story. You remember that one?
Walk me through that. Yeah, remind me. From
you don't remember that?
We just showed.
Yes. Well, first of all, you remember when he was pointing to the wall and he was like, I want a bunch of ants, not a bunch of cockroaches. And we were like, what is he talking about? Like, we're building this program because we want a bunch of ants. And we're like, ants are tiny. They're not powerful. He's like, yeah, but when the lights come on, they don't scatter. Like cockroaches scatter. They go all over the place. Like, I want a bunch of ants. And he literally looked at me and he was like, Pollack, I told you, because he recruited me as an H-back to Georgia Tech. And he looked at me, he was like, I told you, you should have played H-back. And I'm like,
I tell you once a month.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because as good as a defensive end as you were, obviously, like historically good, generationally good, I'm telling you, Pollack, if college football were the way it is today, and tight ends could do what Brock Bowers does, like and what Warren does at Penn State, and you could use them in all the different ways with handoffs and putting them in the shotgun and reverses and bubbles and all that stuff. If that era was around when Pollack played, absolutely would have been an H-back.
Yeah,
O'Leary had this conversation too.
O'Leary was really like, O'Leary's like, you made a mistake. Yeah, he should have told you. You should have come to Tech. I was like, we beat y'all every year. Like,
and you said, and I think it worked out okay.
That's exactly what I said. I think it worked out all right. But
I think I did all right.
I appreciate it, but the credit card roulette was my favorite moments on Thursday Night Football because so credit card roulette is when you give the waitress all of the credit cards of everybody there to pay for a meal. She puts them behind her back and she'll take one out and that one's safe. And the next one's safe, and the next one's safe. And if y'all don't know by knowing Jesse well enough, like Jesse knows how to swirl wine like that. He knows how to do that. He has good taste. He's not a barbarian like me, like exact opposites. He knows some of that stuff. So the bill would get a little bit pricey. I am notoriously extremely cheap. I'm cheap as crap. Okay. Like 100%.
Validate.
But
yes.
The credit card roulette run, Jesse, have you ever seen anything like that?
No, to the point where I thought it was fixed for a while. Like David didn't lose once. And he went on a run of like, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say 14 weeks, maybe 15 weeks.
At least.
Where he didn't lose. There's a lot of people, by the way, in credit card roulette that think the first card gets pulled is the one who pays. That is not in fact accurate. You build the suspense and the drama by people being eliminated from having to pay as their card gets pulled. So there'd be so many people like early on, in the season, generally it kind of gets divided. Everybody loses a certain week here or there. But by like week 6, Pollack still hasn't lost. All of a sudden, there are a lot of haters at the dining table who want him to lose. And so when the waitress pulls out the first card, they're like looking over the table to see what it's going to be. And it's like Pollack, first card out. And then he's laughing at all of us. And he's like, again. And he like gets up from the table and he like leaves. And he's like, safe again. I should have ordered another steak. And we're all sitting there now. We're all sweating because we all think that, we're going to have to pay for it. like you can't imagine how many people wanted him to lose until it finally happened. And Pollack looked like he was having an aneurysm.
That is not. All right. I can
and
a million
which, I mean,
percent validate that.
If you do like the cost average basis, like over the weeks, what Pollack had to pay for dinner was like $3.13 based on all the money he saved for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And there was like, I remember Josh Hoffman, our producer, when Pollack finally lost, he got up from the table and was just celebrating the loss because finally the streak
100%.
came to an end. Finally, it came to an end. It was amazing.
I'm not sure if he said storm the castle or not, but he definitely lifted his hands up in jubilation.
No, he did not say storm the castle. No.
And knowing him too, I know that loss hurt him way more than any of those wins.
Yeah,
because of how tight he is.
Oh, I know. he didn't talk. He didn't talk until we got into the booth the next game. He didn't eat anything for breakfast or lunch. He was just saving it all together. He had a bag of chips. He was just like, all right. He's like, I have to cut back.
All right, so college football this season. Do you think so? Looking back on it now, did it, work in a way? The way the 12-team playoff went, how it was structured, overall, just thoughts on how it went.
I mean, in the end, I think the best team won, in my opinion. I think Ohio State was the best team, and in a lot of ways, I think it was interesting just to kind of show, even after an early season loss against Oregon, and then a really heartbreaking loss for them against Michigan late, that teams with 2 losses still can be the best, and it's the teams that play the best at the end of the year that are peaking at the right time. Obviously, Ohio State took that momentum, and they were able to do it. With respect to how the playoff is set up, I don't think conference champions should be double rewarded with a bye week. Like I don't think Boise State should have gotten a bye, and I don't know if Arizona State really should have gotten a bye or not. But I mean, I think conference champions getting in is one thing, but I do think there has to be some restructuring with respect to the final rankings in the seedings. But in terms of the quality of the games, especially late in the playoff, like looking back at Arizona State and Texas, and then Penn State, Notre Dame, and Texas, Ohio State. I mean, those are incredible games. There was a tremendous product on the field. So to me, net in the first year of the expanded format, absolutely, I thought it worked.
When you look at the landscape of college football, like how much do you think it's changed in this era with transfer portal, with NIL? Like how much when you watch tape and you're watching guys and you're player for player, position by position on especially some of these great teams or the best teams, like how much has it changed from watching from 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Oh my God. I mean, night and day, David. I mean, I know we've talked about it in the past too. It's like, I just think it's a different world completely. I don't even know, like for you and I, back when we played, like I remember if you transferred, that was like a sign of weakness for you.
Mm-hmm.
That you didn't want to stick around and grind it out and compete and get back on the field. Today, it's just so common, especially I feel like at the quarterback position where you see guys just bouncing around sometimes 2, 3, maybe even 4 times. It's just become that's just the landscape now. And I mean, teams lose great players to the draft, and they can reload so quickly now because of the portal. And NIL play is a massive factor in that, and getting those kinds of guys in. To me, like it's just so different. It's so night and day different from I think anything certainly that I experienced at Florida, and really anything that we've seen in the last 5 years. And David and I talk about this a lot too. I feel for coaches in a lot of ways now, having to constantly re-recruit your own guys. Think about that. Like all of the time and effort you put in to getting this high school talent into your locker room every single year now, that they're getting picked, that they're getting called, they're getting reached out to by other programs. And not just do you have to recruit new players to come in, but you have to constantly be re-recruiting your own guys. It's so much extra work that goes into it. And I think that's why there's a lot of coaches, I think Nick Saban being one of them, who kind of got fed up and sort of saw the writing on the wall and what was happening. They just decided, I don't want to be a part of that.
So is it fair to say that Jesse Palmer's career at Florida would look a little different in today's world than it did in that time frame? Do you feel like you're in one spot for 4 years like you were?
I
Probably
think
not.
I don't know. It's like it's really hard to say. What I do know is I would have had a few more bucks in my pocket, which means I would have been wearing a lot more Abercrombie and Fitch. Like 20-year-old Jesse Palmer has no idea what to do with any money. Like I don't know what I could have spent that on, honestly, except to get like 3 more pairs of cargo shorts. That's basically it.
But you think about like if you were getting yanked out, what you did. If some of y'all don't remember, like Spurrier would play multiple quarterbacks. He was okay with that, and you didn't really have a choice. Like I don't know, that might have been something like, hey, you know what? I don't really want to get yanked out every other play, and I kind of want to go compete and play. And so it's a realistic question, like if you would have put up with that kind of stuff.
That's a great point. I think that was a unique situation with obviously an all-time great coach, and that was his coaching style, and it had worked at Florida in an era where if you transferred, you had to sit a year out. There was a penalty for transferring also.
Yep.
And obviously no guarantee. Plus, here's the thing. I mean, at Florida, like we were throwing to first round receivers every single year. We were just reloading. We were surrounded by so much NFL talent. We wanted to be in the fun and gun. But that strategy today, to David's point, I agree. I don't think anybody would put up with that. I think a lot of people would say, I want to go somewhere where I can compete in the offseason, win the job, and feel like I can hold that, even if we throw interceptions or even if we lose games. No doubt.
So all right, Spurrier, do you
Brent,
think?
Brent, let me grab this real quick because
gotcha.
I want you need to hear this, Brent.
Okay.
Jesse, I want to hear how do you think Spurrier would handle a 2-minute drill? Maybe even an older Spurrier that's coaching at the time and that's really showing you what a 2-minute drill looks like. I want to know. I want everybody to hear that story, and you could absolutely do the voice because you're phenomenal with the Spurrier voice. But
okay.
Can you tell that story?
I can tell a story. Yeah. So my junior year, so this is like 99 at Florida. Doug Johnson and I were quarterbacks on the Florida team, and in season, we were in practice, and we were trying kind of like a 2-minute situation. And coach wasn't happy with the way the offense was being run. He didn't like the tempo. He didn't like the execution. So in the middle of practice, coach actually decided he was going to play quarterback and show us how to operate the 2-minute drill. He actually put a helmet on his head. He had his like Gator golf shirt, and he's got like the shorts, and he's like running out there, and he just borrowed, I think.
Well,
I think
Jesse, give me the helmet, Jesse.
Nah, just give me your helmet. Okay, here we go. Okay, 2-minute drill. Here we go. And he runs out, and he's going against our scout team defense. And we've got like Jabbar Gaffney and Riche Caldwell and Daryl Jackson and Travis Taylor. And there's dudes out there. And so Doug and I are kind of sitting there, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. I don't think I've ever seen coach like play full speed. And so he goes out and he starts the drive, and he like hands off a draw. And it gets like 8 yards, and the drive continues. He gets right back up to the line of scrimmage. And then he throws like a swing pass, and it looked pretty good. He hits like a running back. It might have been Robert Gillespie, somebody coming out of the backfield on a swing, puts it right out in front of him, catches it. Very next play, he throws like a middle screen to the running back. So the ball hasn't gone very far down the field yet. And so Doug and I are kind of sitting there, and I'm like, man, I wonder if he's going to like let it go. I'm curious to see if he still has it. And so the next play, he calls like a vertical route down the field, and he gets the ball, he drops back. It's got the guy running downfield. And of course, you got like the walk-on safety scout team All-American back there who doesn't get the memo that, you don't pick off the head ball coach. He like jumps up, picks the ball. Actually, I remember it wasn't the safety. It was Ferrier. It was Ferrier's little brother. Remember Ferrier from the Steelers?
Yeah.
James.
Yeah, his little brother on the scout team jumps up, makes this incredible interception, lands on his feet, turns around, convoy of blockers, and goes pick 6. House call. Scout team is going crazy, erupting. Like they're cheering, they're going nuts. The dudes are like jumping up and down on each other. And like, I'm looking around like, oh my God. Like he just picked off, like he might be off the team. Like he just picked off the head ball coach. And Spurrier walks over to me and he takes his helmet off and he kind of fixes his hair and he kind of comes off and he's like, yeah, sometimes you just kind of, you back, it just kind of, you gotta wait. Yeah. Slipsies. Okay, let's get to the next drill. And he kind of like jogs off the field. It was just kind of like, yeah, I got away from me, just slipped out of my hand. Okay, all right, no problem. And off he goes. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable.
And if you ever said that to him, he would have absolutely murdered you.
The balls Farrier has for making that play is unbelievable. It
feels like that's something you go up and you hit it, it hits your hands and you just drop it. Like,
yeah, or you just like, you just kind of let it go over
your hands.
Head. Yeah, whatever. You kind of like do one of these awkward things and it goes through and Riche scores and that's it. That's the end of the drive. But
so does Coach Spurrier, how does he handle today's college football? Have you talked to him about it? Like, is that something where it's like,
no, I'll tell you, I mean, I don't think too differently. I think his mentality, I think honestly wouldn't change a whole lot. I called a couple of games at Florida this year and I got to see Coach. And when it was kind of Graham Mertz, DJ Lagway, and it's going back and forth, and one guy's playing a series, the other guy's playing another series, and Coach would pop his head into the booth, and he'd be like, "They got to play both of them. You play both of them, and just if they're both about as good as the other, and they can both run the same plays, you let them both go, and you figure out that thing." Or, I don't know if his mentality in terms of that would really change. I think Coach has always felt like if you've got two guys that are about as good as the other and they can both do things equally well, then both guys get a shot. You kind of ride it out and see maybe who has the hot hand. You go from there. But like, I don't doubt for a second, by the way, that Coach would still win games today. By the way, like if he was coaching, like when you think back to what he did, like everyone always remembers Florida and what he did there. I think fewer people remember just how good South Carolina was. When David and I were calling their games, I mean, they were a top 10 team perennially every year. And then people forget what he did at Duke, like before all that. Like he won a conference championship at Duke. It's crazy. Like he's everywhere he's been. Like that dude just wins, and he's an incredible football mind. I've been lucky. Like in the NFL, I played for Sean Payton and Mike McCarthy and North Turner, some really, really good play callers, right? Like all timers. I don't know if anyone I ever saw the game as well as Coach did on the sideline from field level, could feel the game and just call plays. He never had 10 plays scripted. He never went into a game with a plan. He didn't have a big play sheet with every down and distance and situation, 3rd and 6 here in my top 5, red zone throws here in my top 5. He never did any of that. He would just call the game. In fact, the only sheet he ever gave me was a touchdown pass sheet. He called me into his office a couple days before the game, and he'd give me a paper that he had written in pen, and he would say, "Here are touchdown passes for the game this week. Here are touchdown passes from the 25-yard line, from the 20-yard line, from the 15-yard line." And he'd say, "Just fold that up, put it in your back pocket. Just take a look at it when you're walking to class." That was the only thing he ever did. It was his
Amazing.
sixth sense of calling plays. I'm telling you, it was unbelievable.
Playing the position, like understanding the position and the way he did obviously helps him a lot. Last thing, and we'll get you out of here. When I watched Florida this year, and obviously you're just speaking about your Florida days, but watching Florida this year, man, like I saw a rough start. I saw a hard schedule. But I saw another team in Tallahassee who had a rough start that never responded. Like they got punched and their culture wasn't strong enough to survive it. But like Billy Napier, who we've met him many a times, just an awesome human being, like a really good dude to talk to. But like that team didn't fold it up. Like you had to have some pride in that. And then I look at DJ Lagway coming back and I look at what they've held together. Like I feel better about Florida, I would say, than I have in a while. Like, is that the feeling you get as an alum and a guy that played there? And obviously you always want your squad to do well.
Yeah. I feel like it's so cliche, right? Like we all hear it all the time, the culture that somebody's building in a place, and that's not something that's obviously tangible. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but every coach tries to build that, whatever that culture may look like to them. And I know that was one thing I think we constantly were hearing about Billy Napier, and that there was a buy-in and people were believing. I mean, I called that Miami game early in the year where they got blown out. I called that Texas A&M game early in the year at home where they got blown out, and Billy Napier's getting booed coming off the field at the Swamp. I mean, which is something you never ever see there from the home crowd. And it was just kind of this repetitive message we keep hearing from them. They've got young guys, they're talented guys, but people care about each other. And then you could see it getting better. Like the win against Kentucky, how they played Georgia close, even though Lagway got hurt early in that game. They played tough. And then, of course, we get the game on the road at Texas where Lagway can't play because of the hamstring injury, and they get blown out. But then their rebound after that to come back and beat Ole Miss. I think it was LSU first, then Ole Miss, and then Florida State, and then kind of finish the season on a 4-game swing. I mean, the confidence, I think, in the locker room, but also just amongst the alumni, and certainly, I mean, me and a lot of, former teammates that aren't chat groups and text groups that we talk about all the time. I think we feel really good about it. And it's just amazing how just winning 1 or 2 games, big games like that, changes their recruiting landscape, not just in high school, but through the portal now. Some of these wins they've had, what the roster is looking like. I think people were afraid if they fired Napier, they were going to lose DJ Lagway and Baugh and some of these young, talented Graham at linebacker, some of these really good young true freshman players. But the nucleus, I think, looks pretty good for next year. The schedule's still brutal because they have to play all those same teams again, just kind of in a flip. But the SEC also looks a lot different next year with guys like, Miller leaving and Jackson Dart leaving and all these different players that are off, and Carson Beck's no longer at Georgia. And so we'll see. But I think the temperature, like there's a lot of way more excited people, I think, in Gainesville and around the program starting into the 2025 season than there was a year ago. No question.
Yeah, but the schedule's still brutal. I mean, you could be really, really good and win 8 games. I mean, that's the difference, but they definitely look like they got some pieces in place. Well, appreciate it, man. Great to catch up with you. I'm sure we'll be on the game plenty in the near future. Not playing. We wish we were playing, but wish we were playing in the near future. But appreciate you joining us, man, telling some stories. I told y'all he would deliver, and he always does with the stories. Thanks, man.
I appreciate you, bro. Storm the castle. We'll see ya.